I started coming here when I was 19, so that's got to be about 1997. It was just the notion of playing chamber music in this kind of setting with, really great musicians all together, and the challenge of playing a large amount of repertoire in a very short amount of time, learning how to prepare. I was pretty young, and I didn't have very much chamber music experience, so it was a new thing for me. But I was very lucky the invitation came because Toby Sachs was actually interested in another pianist who was with Young Concert Artists at the time, the same organization that was managing me. And then good managers, they said, oh, well, you should also hear this guy. And gave Toby a tape of my playing, and she also brought me. So it was just a very lucky thing. I sort of piggybacked. An important job. Because I think, the tendency for musicians is to stay in the comfort zone. And the comfort zone, of course, includes all the big masterpieces, the ones that we know work perfectly. I think it's really important, though, to play those pieces because these were composers who, at the time, were important, who dedicated their life to the art, and very often had something to say. They may not have said it as profoundly or as consistently as, Brahms or Beethoven or Bartók, but there still is a voice to be heard, and I think it's important as a musician that we use our craft to give voice to deserving voices. So it's a great thing. I personally enjoy the process. I know I'm not unanimous in that viewpoint, because often there is a slight frustration factor if a piece is full of ideas but not perfectly written, and we have to find some way to compensate for the weaknesses of the piece to make it come off as a good performance. That can be frustrating. But then again, that's Taneyev and Arensky were inspired. I heard the Arensky piece I was in, the Taneyev I listened to, and I actually haven't played the piano quartet. I played the piano quintet, which I actually think is a great piece. The quartet I was not that hot on, but not because I felt that Taneyev was uninspired. Actually, it was sort of the opposite. I felt like he was so overly inspired that he got too big for his britches, he had this really sort of juicy, almost cheesy theme as his slow movement choice, and I was just marveling at, how enthusiastic the music was at times. Of course, that enthusiasm translated to more and more sound, thicker and thicker voices, and less clarity. And so that's the mistake of a composer. So what that means to me, judging Taneyev, is that he's not the greatest composer of all time. He's still a great composer. He's written some really great pieces. There are still great parts to the piece, and it's still worthwhile. He's an interesting composer because there are some pieces which are absolute masterpieces, like the string quartet, the first piano trio. Those are examples of pieces that just really, really work. The second piano trio, which is the one we played this year, is a good piece. A lot of great ideas, beautiful themes, and some problems in how it's written. A little bit thin in some moments, balance issues here and there, maybe the idea is overextended. But again, it's fun to look at a composer who we know he's good and he has something to say. And to just kind of give it our best. And so what if it's not like the world's greatest masterpiece? I don't think anybody in the audience is, hurting for it. They're the better for having pleasure. I was actually the only one in the group who played it before now. And so the string players actually turned to me for some level of guidance just at the beginning when we were first reading it. How fast should this part go? Do you remember the last time you played it? Did they do this? Did they do that? But of course, once we got past that initial reading, we were all basically on the same level. It was great to revisit it because it's a truly great piece of music, I think. It's so extensive, and it's so full of fantasy and interesting colors, yet, unlike other composers who sort of fall short of the technical capability to support such ideas, the Bloch Quintet seems so concise at the same time. It's like he allows the music to float, and yet it's grounded in the structure. So, structurally you're not lost when you're listening to it. And the other thing is balance. Balance is always an issue in any music, certainly chamber music. And, especially when you combine piano and strings, I think that it's like a very dangerous combination. It can be. with Bloch, it's like he understood by nature how things were going to come out dynamically. And all the markings are accurate. And the way it's written, the piano part is heavy, but not in such a way that it's overwhelming the strings. I'm not constantly cutting into the range of the cello or cutting into the range of the viola. It's like he knew how to keep things separate enough that you can still hear everything. So the clarity of the voices in that piece, there's nothing I wouldn't play. The only limitation I would impose is there are certain pieces I won't play unless I know in advance that there's going to be enough rehearsal. I'll give you an example. Messiaen Quartet for the End of Time. Ligeti Piano Trio, Horn Trio, Those are pieces I would not mess with in a festival environment unless I knew in advance the other players had played them and we're going to have maybe some extra rehearsals planned, because I think those pieces are so difficult to put together unless you've got really veteran players, and it would be the first time for me. So that's a scary thing for pieces like that. But I would definitely play the pieces. There's certainly no limitation. And Schoenberg and Berg and things like that, I'm very happy to experiment. I mean, recently in New York, I played at Carnegie Hall. I did Carter's Dialogues for Piano. Like, that's not my thing, really. That was my first time playing a piece by Carter, and it was, piano and orchestra, which is like even harder, because if I screw up rhythmically on a solo piece, I doubt the audience knows it, but in an orchestral piece, if you get off, it's bad. Right. So there's a lot of pressure. And, having played it and it was a successful performance, I'm in a better position now to judge Carter than I was before. I think if I had said, I don't care for Carter before, that would just be like, well, Adam, have you really played it? Have you really tried it? Like, are you just prejudging because it's hard? Or, now I can say that having experienced it, I know what's good about the music. I know what I don't like about the music also, but there was a lot of good to it. And it was a kind of mathematical puzzle for my brain, which was frankly interesting to work on. It's so different from everything else I play, where I'm concerned about tone color and balancing and lyricism and legato and all that cantabile stuff. And here in this piece, I'm playing almost detached the whole time. And I'm just sticking notes in the middle of rests. But my brain is not oriented that way, and so it was a great challenge. And it actually I think it made me a better musician, because I can count better, and I can, in a way, compare what I had to do in Carter to what I'll have to do to Tuya tonight, and actually feel relatively at ease, let's say, with Tuya, because the Carter challenged me so. Toby Sachs is an amazing musician, and I consider her a mentor. And it really comes out in her playing, and it comes out in her commentary. Little things she says. It's been great, because she'll keep out of the rehearsal process if she's not in the group, let's say. She doesn't butt in, she doesn't interfere. But sometimes she'll just say one or two little things that are just right on, just the thing you need to hear. She's also given me a lot of latitude with repertoire. She's shown a lot of trust towards me to be able to shoulder the responsibilities that she demands of me. So it's been really great. I feel like she's pushed me, actually, to be an even better chamber musician and even more prepared. Sax is kind of the godmother of the whole thing. And once you get to know her, and once you get to know Marty, and once you get to know all the musicians you work with, you're part of this family. And you sit around and you have meals together, and you rehearse together, and you talk about everything under the sun together. You play wiffle ball together, and you do whatever. But there's just this feeling of camaraderie that goes so far beyond the normal experience. I think musicians are pretty lonesome people by nature, just because we end up practicing so much, and we end up traveling so much. And unless you're lucky to be in a group that is very successful and travels together, you generally travel by yourself. So there's something really nice about arriving, settling in, unpacking your suitcase, and hanging out with people day after day after day. And having Toby Sachs there as a kind of guiding figure, and she's the link with the past, and she's the link with the future too. She's seen the whole thing through. There's just a feeling that you belong to something very... The highlight piece for me has been the Chausson Piano Quartet that I did here. Not because I think it's greater than any other piece I played here, but the group, the piece, the evening, somehow it all gelled together, and it was truly one of the most enjoyable performances I did. I don't like the hall in terms of the acoustics. I don't think it's a great hall. And I'll be much happier to play in Benaroya Hall from that angle. But yeah, there's something so charming here, the trees and the feeling and the picnics. I mean, I actually even missed this chapel where we used to hold the pre-concerts, and I remember it was such an exciting thing at 7 o'clock to be in here. And, you know, looking at the trees, and then someone would come out and play, and this room has nice acoustics. And yeah, I'll miss Lakeside, but at the same time, you know, ready for the future.
Sure.
Once we're in Benaroya and we're in that future, I don't think we're going to look at the past and miss it.